My name is Melissa Carter. I'm 31 years old. At my mother's 60th birthday party, with the whole room filled with lights and laughter, she raised her glass of wine, looked me straight in the eye and slowly said, "The greatest wish of my life is that you were never my daughter." Her words dropped like a knife, cutting through the warmth of the gathering and leaving behind a heavy silence. I stood frozen, holding the birthday cake in my hands, feeling as if everyone was staring at me like I didn't belong in my own family. My whole life I had lived to please her, sacrificing work, love, and even my dreams. But all I ever got in return was cruel denial. Have you ever been rejected by your own parents to the point where you felt like you had no place in the family? If you have, then you know the pain I felt that night when the person who gave me life openly wished I had never existed. If this story touches a corner of your heart, leave a comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you can walk with me on this journey of breaking free from invisible chains. Because what I did after that moment is something my family never saw coming. After that birthday night, I walked out of the restaurant in a daze, my heartbeat still pounding in my chest. I drove through Denver's bright streets, but all I saw was a blur of mist through my tears. It wasn't the first time my mother hurt me, but it was the first time she said outright what I had been trying to deny for 31 years. That in her eyes I was never a daughter worth having. When I was little, our home was a 2-story white house in a quiet neighborhood. From the outside, my family looked like a picture of perfection. My mother, Evelyn, always appeared in neat dresses, her hair carefully curled, her voice soft when speaking to neighbors. Everyone praised her as the model mom. But once the door closed, I knew that softness was reserved only for outsiders. I still remember being 6 years old, chosen for the lead role in the school's spring play. I ran home excited, clutching the teacher's note in my hand. But Mom just glanced at it and coldly said, "Melissa, what's the point of acting? You need to study math like your sister Hannah if you want a future." I didn't fully understand, just felt the sting of disappointment. I thought maybe next time I would try harder so she would smile at me the way she always smiled at Hannah. But next time never came. The older I grew, the sharper the comparisons became. Hannah, my older sister, was always Mom's pride. She excelled in school, sang beautifully, had a slim figure, golden hair, and was constantly praised. Anyone who came to our house would hear Mom brag about Hannah, her scholarships, her sports team selection, her wealthy boyfriend. Me. I was introduced with a single line, "This is Melissa, the younger one." The favoritism wasn't just in words. I remember Hannah's sweet 16. Mom threw her a huge backyard party with a small band, a multi-tier cake, even fireworks. Friends filled the yard. But when I turned 16, all I got was a small store-bought cake, eaten in the kitchen while everyone else was busy. "You don't need all that fuss like your sister," Mom said. "A cake is enough." I forced a smile, swallowed the dry cake, and told myself it didn't matter. But deep inside I knew I was forgotten. My father, Richard, was the only one who tried to fill that void. He was a family doctor, always busy, but whenever he came home he gave me a warm smile. When Mom scolded me for grades, Dad would sit beside me, rest his hand on my shoulder and whisper, "Sweetheart, you don't need to be anyone but yourself." I believed him. I believed as long as I had Dad I would be okay. But when I was 17, Dad died suddenly of a stroke. My world collapsed. At the funeral, it was the first time I saw Mom cry until she collapsed. But when her tears dried, the emptiness he left was filled with harsher coldness. With no one to shield me, I became the target of her criticism. I began hearing things like, "Melissa, you're too heavy, you need to lose weight, no man will want you." Or, "Look at yourself, have you done anything to make me proud?" She said it so often I started to believe I was truly worthless. I was 5'7", 125 pounds, perfectly normal, but in her eyes I was always too big. I looked in the mirror and saw a girl who wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. Meanwhile, Hannah left for college in New York, then got a job at a big investment bank. Every time she visited, she was treated like royalty. Mom would open wine, cook lavish dinners, her eyes glowing with pride at Hannah. And me, the one always by her side, was reduced to commands. "Melissa, set the table. Melissa, Why don't you be more like your sister? I became a shadow in my own home. The cruelest part was, I once had a chance to leave. Senior year, I got a full scholarship for art school in California, the dream I had nurtured since childhood. To paint, to create, to live with colors. I brought the acceptance letter home so full of hope. But Mom started sighing, claiming dizziness, poor health, and saying if I left, she'd have no one to care for her. I still remember one night she clutched her chest and said, "If you leave me, I might just die." I couldn't bear that thought. So I gave up California and chose a small college in Denver to stay close. People called me a dutiful daughter, but I carried guilt every day. In lecture halls, I watched classmates paint bold canvases while I sat in accounting, scribbling numbers. I told myself I'd have time later, but years passed, and I was bound tighter and tighter by calls, demands, responsibilities from Mom. "Melissa, go pick up my medicine. Melissa, call the roofer, I can't afford it. Melissa, mow the lawn this weekend." Each request was another rope around me. I knew she had money. Dad left her investments enough for comfort, but she played poor to keep me near. I spent more than 10 years like that, silently giving up youth, love, dreams, just to be the good daughter. Sometimes I tried to prove myself. At 30, after years of hard work, I was promoted to creative director at a small marketing firm. For once I felt proud. I rushed to tell Mom, hoping she'd smile. She only smirked. At a small company, any title is meaningless. Hannah is the real success. My joy vanished instantly. Looking back, I see I lived invisible in my own family. From childhood on, I was a side character in a story Mom wrote to glorify Hannah. And I believed I didn't deserve love. That birthday night was just the final straw. When Mom wished I'd never been her daughter, I could no longer lie to myself. I knew, even if I sacrificed 10 more years, she'd never accept me. What I didn't know was that moment would open a hidden truth that would change my life forever. After that night, I lived in a state of emptiness mixed with rage. I felt like a stranger in my family, but deep inside I had a burning urge to uncover the truth, something long hidden behind our house's walls. Memories from when I was 18 and Dad was still alive came back clearly. Back then, after I gave up California, Dad once handed me a small brown folder with bank papers. He whispered, almost afraid Mom would hear, "Melissa, this is the money I saved for you. Whatever path you choose, remember you'll always have a foundation." I clutched it like treasure. But weeks later, when I checked again, the account was empty. I asked Dad, he just forced a smile. I was too young to understand, thinking maybe he spent it on something urgent. But now I remember the pain in his eyes, like a man stripped of his voice in the family. After his death, it was forgotten. But now, after Mom's rejection, those memories stabbed me again. I began to suspect, did Mom take that money? And if so, why? One night, I went into the basement storage. There were still old boxes of Dad's papers. I dug through dusty files until I found a plastic folder. Inside were bank statements from over 15 years ago. My hands shook as I flipped through and froze. The account under Dad's and my name had been drained in a single day. The withdrawal was by the joint account holder, my mother. I collapsed onto the floor, papers scattering. The truth screamed at me. The money Dad saved for me had been taken by Mom. I remembered his eyes, wanting to tell me but silenced by fear. He must have known but couldn't fight her. I sat for hours in the dark holding those papers. It wasn't just anger I felt, but crushing loss. For years I had lived like a shadow, but I always believed Dad wanted me to have a way out. And it was Mom who cut that rope. I decided to confront her. The next day I went to her house. She was sitting in her armchair, tea perfectly placed on the table. I laid the papers in front of her. "Mom," I said, my voice shaking, "the money Dad left for me. Why did you take it?" She glanced down, eyes pausing only briefly before she looked back up, her face calm, almost cold. "Where did you dig this up?" "These are Dad's records. My name was on the account. But you emptied it." She gave a chilling little laugh. "Melissa, you're naive. That money was family property. I used it to put Hannah through college, to give her a proper future. You never had what it takes like your sister. I only did what was best for the family." I went numb. Each word felt like a slap. But that was Dad's money for me. I cried. A child without potential doesn't need that much. I made the right choice. And look at Hannah, so successful now. You should thank me. I stood frozen, chest tight. In that moment, I knew no matter how hard I tried, I'd never be enough. I was just a pawn in her plan, a name to highlight Hannah. That night, I lay curled in the dark. But instead of endless tears, a fire began to burn inside me. I couldn't stay a victim forever. I needed the truth, and I needed to reclaim what was mine, even if it was just justice. I know many of you may have felt the sting of being hurt by your own family in public, when private pain becomes an open wound. Have you ever been in that situation, torn between wanting to scream and fearing you'd be seen as weak? I'd truly love to hear your story in the comments. And if you believe this journey deserves to reach more people, please share it and subscribe to the channel so we can continue unfolding stories like this together. After sleepless nights, I decided to see a lawyer. I needed to know if I had any rights in this matter. The office was in downtown, all bright glass walls in stark contrast to the heaviness inside me. The lawyer, a middle-aged woman named Barbara, listened as I told her everything. I handed her the papers. She read for a long time before looking up. Melissa, legally speaking, yes, Mrs. Evelyn had joint ownership of the account, so her withdrawing the money isn't considered illegal. But if we can prove it was money your father intended specifically for you, then at least we'd have grounds for a claim. I sighed. But my father's gone. How could I ever prove that? She tapped her pen on the desk, thoughtful. We may need to track down a will or any document that shows his intent. Otherwise, the only option is facing this truth head-on. I left the office heart heavy. I knew the legal path wouldn't be easy. But what hurt most wasn't losing the money, it was losing trust. That evening, I got an unexpected call. It was Hannah. Her voice sounded cold, but there was something unusual behind it. Melissa, come to my place. There's something you need to know. I drove over in turmoil. At her upscale apartment in downtown Denver, she opened the door with a tense face. We sat in the living room, warm yellow light casting both comfort and distance. You found some of Dad's old papers, didn't you? Hannah asked directly. I nodded. She sighed, swirling her wine glass. You're not surprised to learn Mom used that money for me, are you? Of course I'm surprised. I'm furious, Hannah. Why didn't you ever say anything? Her eyes flickered with guilt. Because I knew if I told you it would break you. Back then I was too young and selfish. I benefited from your sacrifice and I stayed silent. Tears welled up in my eyes. So all these years I lived like I didn't exist while you enjoyed what was supposed to be mine too. Hannah said nothing. She just downed her wine. Her silence was the clearest confession. In that moment, I realized my family had hidden a bigger secret and I was only scratching the surface. If my own sister could stay quiet for her own gain, how many more truths was I yet to face? I left Hannah's apartment that night. The wind cut bitterly cold, but inside me a fire sparked. I wouldn't let the past chain me anymore. I would dig for the truth to the end, and for the first time in my life I wouldn't back down. After meeting Hannah, I couldn't find peace. Her admission kept echoing. She knew Mom took my money, she knew it was a sacrifice I never chose, and she stayed silent to benefit from it. I didn't know if I was angrier at Hannah or sadder for myself. But one thing was certain, I couldn't go on as if nothing had happened. I still had to go to work each day. My job at the small marketing firm in Denver gave me some sense of competence. My coworkers respected me, and when I became creative director, I thought it was my first step in proving myself to Mom. But now, after what I'd discovered, the title meant nothing. In Mom's eyes, I would always be expendable. Each morning I sat in my office, sunlight spilling across my desk, yet inside I was hollow. I pushed myself to focus on projects, encouraged my team with positive words, but when I came home I sank into exhaustion. Every night I tossed and turned, wondering why I let my youth slip away like this. One evening, as I sat alone in my small kitchen, Mom called. Her voice came flat, without a hint of care. Melissa, come by tomorrow. The living room window's hinge is broken. Hiring someone costs money, and you know I live off retirement, I can't spare much. I bit my lip hard. I knew she still had the investments Dad left her. She was never truly strapped. But I had grown used to hearing things like this. I paused, then said quietly, "I'll take care of it." After hanging up, I sat frozen, my nails digging into my skin. I realized I had become a shadow, always obeying, always giving, as if I had no right to refuse. The next day I went to her house. She sat in her armchair, hair neatly styled, silk scarf draped casually over her shoulders. She didn't look like someone struggling. She glanced at me and pointed at the window. "Fix it. Hannah's bringing the kids to visit and I don't want the house looking shabby." I worked silently. As I tightened the hinge with a screwdriver, I heard Mom on the phone with a women's club friend, her voice lively. "Oh, Hannah's bringing her whole family soon. She's amazing, just closed $1 million deal in New York. I'm so proud of her." I stood just a few feet away, but I was invisible. She never once spoke of me with pride. That night I went home drained. Looking in the mirror, I saw a thin woman with dark circles and tangled hair, and I asked myself, how did I let this happen? I had a steady job, friends, but everything was eclipsed by Mom's shadow. Dating never worked out either. I remembered once bringing a boyfriend over for dinner. Before we even sat down, Mom gave him a look and scoffed. "Melissa, this is the kind of man you pick? He doesn't look like he has a real career. Didn't you learn from Hannah? Thomas, her husband, is so successful." He stayed silent through dinner and broke up soon after. I knew he couldn't take the judgmental atmosphere. And so it went. Every relationship I had crumbled against the cold wall named Evelyn. By the time I turned 30, I realized I had nothing but work. I buried myself in busyness, hoping fatigue would drown out the loneliness. But in quiet nights, as the clock ticked in my small house, I felt an emptiness with no bottom. Then Mom truly began to decline. She developed hip arthritis, making it hard to walk. The doctor recommended a one-story home, but she clung to the old house, filled with memories of Dad. So I became her driver, her nurse, her maid. When her condition worsened, she stayed at my place for 3 weeks. I moved my desk into the kitchen, juggling deadlines while she called out, "Melissa, I need water. Melissa, adjust my pillow. Melissa, check the windows shut." I was exhausted, but I forced myself through it, thinking it was my duty as a daughter. During that time, Hannah visited only a few times, always staying in hotels, never in the house. When she showed up, Mom changed completely. No complaints, no orders. Instead, she laughed, asked about the kids, praised Hannah's homemaking, praised Thomas's career. I sat there invisible, clearing plates, washing dishes while they reminisced about European vacations, trips I was never part of. Even in my own kitchen, abandoned, I clung to hope. I thought maybe if I tried harder, Mom would look at me warmly once, just once. I remembered last Christmas I saved up to buy her a cashmere sweater. She frowned. "This color makes me look pale. Exchange it." The year before, I gave her concert tickets for her favorite musician. He never used them. Who has time for that? For her birthday, I spent all my savings on a spa weekend package. She refused flatly. "Why didn't you just ask Hannah to come? She's all I want." Each time I smiled weakly, burying the pain. I told myself maybe next time. But next time was always the same. Then her 60th birthday approached. I decided this would be my last try. I planned every detail. A party at the city's most elegant restaurant, invited her closest club friends, ordered a special cake from a famous bakery, and spent all my savings on a vintage diamond necklace, the piece she once admired. I thought if not this time, then never. For weeks, I poured myself into preparations, hoping she would see my devotion. But I never imagined that very night would be the end. She raised her glass before everyone and said, "I wish you were never my daughter." The moment hit like a storm, tearing away my last illusion. Every memory flooded back. The mockery, the comparisons, the rejected gifts, the wasted sacrifices. I stood under the lights, stripped bare before the crowd, with nothing left to hold on to. And in that moment I finally understood. My life couldn't stay bound like this. I had lived 31 years in shadows, endured enough rejection and contempt. If I didn't change, I would spend the rest of my life as Hannah's shadow, the thorn in Mom's eyes. At first, the thought was only a faint spark, but each day it grew into a flame. a flame ready to burn through the chains that had bound me too long. That night, after Mom's words sliced through me, I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. The October wind lashed cold against my face, but my heart was colder. I drove through Denver's streets, streetlights blurring past the window. My heartbeat pounded, not from fear but from rage and bitterness rising to my throat. I remembered every guest's eyes as Mom raised her glass, seeing me as a burden. Some avoided my gaze, others whispered, but no one defended me. Hannah sat right beside her, clutching her glass, but said nothing. I knew she felt torn, but her silence still stung like a slap. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark. The gift box lay on the table, the diamond necklace I saved for months, once my last hope for recognition, now proof of my blindness. I had poured my heart into it, but to her I was only excess. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed until my palms were soaked. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. On the kitchen table lay Dad's old papers. I stared at them for a long time, and one thought sparked. Maybe it was time to change. For 31 years I had lived chasing her approval, only to be rejected. Now it was time to stand up, not for Mom, not for Hannah, but for myself. But before I did anything, I wanted a straight answer from my mom. The next day I went to her house. She was sitting in the living room, wearing a pale blue silk robe, her face showing no hint of regret. When she saw me, she smirked. "You actually dared to show up here after last night?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Why did you have to do that in front of everyone? Do you know how much that destroyed me?" She sipped her tea, her voice cold. "Destroyed? Melissa, you destroyed my life the day you were born. I only spoke the truth. I sacrificed too much for you, and you never did anything worthy. Andrea is the one I'm proud of." I felt my whole body tremble. For the first time in my life, I didn't cry, didn't run away. I stayed, facing her cruelty. "No, you're wrong," I said firmly. "I sacrificed my entire life for you. I gave up my dreams, my love, my opportunities just to stay by your side. But you never once acknowledged that." She looked at me, her eyes filled with irritation. "You stayed because you're weak, too afraid to face the world. Don't blame me." I was silent for a moment, then stepped forward and placed a gift box on the table. "This is a present I saved up all year to buy for you. Maybe you don't want it, but at least it proves my love for you. And yet you stood in front of everyone and said something that stripped me of all dignity. Do you really think that's how a mother who loves her child acts?" She froze for a second, then turned her face away without answering. I understood she would never admit the truth. When I left that house, I knew the relationship between my mom and me had reached its absolute limit. There was no going back. But in that very moment, a bold idea formed inside me. If she thought I would always be a useless shadow, then I would show her, and everyone else, that I could rewrite my own story. I started by gathering every piece of evidence about what my mom had done with my father's money. I went to the bank, requested old statements, collected every scrap of paper I could find. I remembered the times my dad whispered for me to hold on to faith, and I promised him I would seek justice for both of us. During that time, Hannah called me. She wanted to meet. We sat in a quiet coffee shop downtown. Hannah looked exhausted, her eyes red. "Melissa," she began, "I'm sorry I stayed silent at the party. But you have to understand, I was stuck in the middle. If I defended you, Mom would have exploded and the whole family would have shattered." I looked right at her, my chest aching. "Hannah, this family shattered a long time ago. Mom never once saw me as her daughter. You know that better than anyone." She lowered her head, saying nothing. After a pause, she sighed. "What are you planning to do next?" I answered with unwavering conviction. "I won't let Mom keep trampling me. I'll prove I'm not worthless. And I'll take back what belongs to me." Hannah gave a faint nod, her eyes showing a flicker of sympathy, though I knew she was still torn between love and the benefits Mom provided. Back home, I looked around my tiny apartment. The paintings I made in college were still rolled up in the corner, gathering dust. I unrolled each one, feeling like I was touching the part of my soul I had abandoned. I had given up my dream just to please my mom, yet in the end she still said I wasn't worthy of being her daughter. I realized I had nothing left to lose. I decided to change. I began painting again. Bright, colorful pieces, the way I wanted to live the rest of my life. By day I still worked. By night I painted until morning. For the first time in years I felt my heart beat with passion. I knew the road ahead would be rough, but at least it was mine. Even then I couldn't escape the pain. Sometimes I broke down crying, remembering her words, remembering her eyes comparing me to Hannah. But then I wiped my tears, stood back up and reminded myself, Melissa, you've endured enough. I started sharing my story with a few close friends. They listened, shocked and outraged on my behalf. One of them said, Melissa, you need to tell this story to more people. Nobody deserves what you've been through. Those words made me think. Maybe it was time not just to live for myself, but to speak for those who had been hurt by their own families. When I looked my mom in the eye, I realized something. Sometimes silence hurts more than harsh words. What do you think? Does staying silent in the face of injustice mean endurance, or is it a betrayal of yourself? I want to hear your thoughts. And if you relate to this, don't hesitate to hit like, leave a comment, or share this story, because maybe out there someone needs to find themselves in these words. One night, I took the diamond necklace out of its box and placed it on the table. I stared at it for a long time, then decided I would never give it to my mom again. It was no longer a gift for her, but proof of my resolve. I would keep it as a reminder that I had once been blind, but from now on I would be different. In the mirror I saw that my eyes no longer looked so dark. There was a light there now, faint but steady. And I knew my true rebellion was only beginning. After days of drowning in anger and shame, I started gathering my willpower. I didn't want to repeat the same cycle. Endure, stay silent, then hope my mom would change. This time I needed to face it, to find the truth to the very end, and above all, to protect myself. I set another meeting with Barbara, the lawyer I had reached out to before. Her office was still quiet, the dim light falling across a dark wooden desk. Barbara pushed her glasses up her nose, listening as I laid out everything I had found. I have the bank statements, I said slowly but firmly. They prove my mom withdrew every cent my father left me. I want to know, is there any way I can fight this? Barbara opened the file, turning each page carefully. After a long silence, she looked at me with serious eyes. Melissa, legally, Mrs. Evelyn, withdrawing the money as a joint account holder wasn't a crime. But if we can prove your father's original intent was for those funds to be yours alone, we may have grounds to sue for misappropriation of inheritance. I clenched my fists, my heart racing. But my father is gone. How can I prove that? Barbara nodded thoughtfully. Yes, that's the challenge. We'd need a will or any document that shows his intentions. Witnesses matter too. Someone who knew he meant that money for you. Do you recall him ever telling anyone else? Suddenly I remembered. That day when my dad handed me the folder, he whispered, "If your mom asks, say you don't know anything. This is our secret." I once thought it was just a passing remark, but now I understood. He had foreseen she might take the money. But witnesses? There was only me. Barbara seemed to read the disappointment in my eyes. She placed her hand on the papers, her tone softening. Melissa, I know this won't be an easy fight. But you need to decide what you truly want. To recover the money or to uncover the truth and affirm your worth. Sometimes justice isn't only in the courtroom's verdict. I stayed silent for a long while. I knew I didn't just want the money. I wanted to shatter the perfect facade my mom had built, to show everyone what she really did. Leaving the law office, I walked down Denver's crowded streets. The wind carried the smell of coffee from nearby cafes, but inside me I felt something else, the scent of determination. That night I called Hannah. She answered after a few rings, her voice hoarse with fatigue. Melissa, what's going on? I need to talk to you. About Dad's money and about Mom. Hannah was quiet for a moment, then agreed to meet. We sat in her apartment, the soft yellow light making the room feel both warm and suffocating. I gathered my courage, looking her straight in the eye. You know Mom took that money. But do you know Dad meant it for me? That wasn't family money. That was my unfinished dream. Hannah sighed, setting her wine glass down. Melissa, I know. Dad once told me he wanted you to have the chance to leave town. But when he died, Mom took complete control. I stayed silent because I benefited. I got tuition, I got everything. And I thought if I pushed back, she'd cut me off too. Hearing that, a wave of pain and fury rose inside me. I stood up, turned away, tears rolling down my face. Hannah, you stayed silent while I was abandoned. You knew, but you let me live like a shadow. Hannah came closer, her hand lightly touching my shoulder. I know I was wrong. But Melissa, if you want to fight this, I'll stand with you. I owe you too much. I turned back to her, my eyes filled with both doubt and hope. Really? You'll testify if needed. Hannah nodded firmly. If it helps you find justice, I will. In that moment, I saw a faint light flicker in the broken bond between us. Forgiveness wouldn't come easily, but at least she was willing to admit the truth. In the days that followed, I began gathering every piece of evidence I could. I dug through Dad's old letters, the notes he'd left in his books. One day, when I opened a small wooden box in the attic, I found a thin journal. His familiar handwriting appeared on the page. Money saved for Melissa, to let her live her dream. My hands shook as I held the journal, tears blurring my vision. This was the proof Dad had left, the confirmation that he truly wanted that money for me. I brought the journal to Barbara. She read every line, nodding. This is a big step forward. It's not a legal will, but it could be strong evidence of his intent. Combined with Hannah's testimony, we might have leverage. I looked at her, hope rising in my chest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. But I also knew this wasn't just a legal battle. It was a battle of the heart. I had to face my mother, the woman who had made me suffer my entire life, with the very truth she despised. That night, I sat alone at my easel. The lamp cast its glow over unfinished canvases. I held the brush, but instead of painting landscapes like usual, I began to paint my memories. My father's face, the gentle look in his eyes when he handed me the folder, the faint smile that carried all his hopes. Every stroke was a vow that I would not let his sacrifice be buried in silence. When the painting was done, I stared at it for a long time. My father seemed to be right there in front of me, and I whispered, I promise, this time I won't back down. Inside me, a plan was taking shape. And I knew the day I would expose the truth to everyone was closer than I thought. That day came faster than I expected. Hannah's wedding was set for midsummer, in one of the most luxurious hotels in Denver. My mother was thrilled, treating it as her grand stage to show the world she had a perfect daughter worthy of marrying into an elite family. Me. Though invited as the younger sister, I knew deep down I was only there to be the backdrop to her picture of perfection. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I was busy preparing my own plan. Barbara and I agreed. If I wanted to reveal the truth, I needed undeniable proof and a moment no one could dismiss. My father's journal, the bank statements, and Hannah's testimony were ready. All we needed was the right time. And what could be more fitting than a wedding in front of hundreds of family, friends, and colleagues? On the wedding day, I wore a simple navy blue dress. Not to stand out, but to keep myself calm and steady for what I was about to do. As I entered the hall, crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. The sound of violins floated through the air. It felt like stepping into another world. White tablecloths covered the tables, roses lined the aisle, everything so extravagant I had to stifle a sigh. This was exactly what my mother had always dreamed of. A stage to flaunt. I glanced around. My mom sat in the front row, her face glowing with pride. Hannah, in her white gown, held the hand of Thomas, the man my mom had praised endlessly. When Hannah smiled at the guests, I caught a flicker of tension in her eyes, as if she knew what was coming. The ceremony began. The priest offered blessings, then came my mother's speech. She walked up to the podium, her posture firm, her voice clear. Today, I am overjoyed to witness my precious daughter Hannah begin this new chapter. She has always been my pride, beautiful, talented, successful. I believe Hannah and Thomas will build a perfect family. Applause thundered through the room. I sat silently, hands clenched tight. Then, unexpectedly, she glanced at me, lips curling. And of course, we also have Melissa here today. She's always around, quietly doing little things. But every family needs someone in the background, right? A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Heat rushed to my face. In that moment I knew it was time. I stood and walked toward the podium. Murmurs spread across the hall. My mother looked at me, surprise mixed with irritation. "Melissa, what are you doing? Sit down." I took a deep breath, my voice ringing through the microphone. "No, Mom. Today I will speak." For years I stayed silent, accepted being treated as a shadow. But today, in front of everyone, I will tell the truth. The hall fell silent. I pulled out the papers in the old journal. These are the bank statements proving my mother withdrew all the money my father saved for me. This is my father's journal, where he wrote clearly that money was for me to pursue my dreams. But it disappeared and no one but my mother took it. That money was used to fund Hannah, to create the perfect image you all admire today. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some mouths dropped open, others turned to my mother in shock. She shot up from her seat, her face flushed. "Melissa, you're lying. How dare you make this up on your sister's wedding day?" I met her gaze, my voice firm. "This is my father's handwriting. These are bank records. And Hannah knows the truth too. For years, you made me the unwanted child, stealing my chance, pouring everything into Hannah. I won't stay silent any longer." Every eye turned to Hannah. She stood in the aisle, her lips trembling. I saw her hesitate, then she stepped forward, her voice breaking. "Melissa's right. Dad told me about that money. And yes, Mom withdrew it for me. I knew. I stayed silent because I was selfish. I benefited. But I can't keep pretending anymore." The whispers exploded into a storm. People murmured, pointed. Thomas, Hannah's new husband, stared at her, visibly stunned. My mother shook, then screamed, "You don't understand. I did it for the family, to make sure at least one of my children succeeded. Melissa, you were never good enough. I couldn't risk it on you." Her words echoed, cold and raw, stripping away the perfect mask she had worn for years. I turned to the crowd, my voice steady. "That is the truth about the woman you all admired. She is not a selfless pillar. She destroyed her own daughter to protect an image. I didn't speak to ruin a wedding. I spoke because I can't let this lie live any longer." Chaos erupted. Some guests left, others whispered furiously. Thomas walked away toward the door, his face heavy. Hannah collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My mother slumped into her seat, covering her face, pride gone. For the first time I saw her defeated, not by me but by the truth she couldn't deny. Stepping down from the podium, my heart pounded, but strangely I felt light. I knew nothing would ever be the same. I had broken the silence, claimed my voice. Whatever came after, I wasn't afraid anymore. The chandeliers still glittered above me, but this time they didn't shine for my mother or for Hannah. They shone for me, for the woman who finally stood tall after 31 years in the shadows of rejection. After that chaotic wedding, I became the center of gossip. By the next day, news had spread through the family, relatives, even old acquaintances in town. My phone buzzed nonstop with calls and texts. Some sent encouragement, saying I was brave for speaking the truth no one else dared to. But others criticized me, calling me selfish for ruining my sister's wedding. I had expected backlash, but facing it still weighed heavily on me. I sat in my small apartment, staring out the window at the morning sunlight, searching for a little peace after the storm. That morning Barbara called. Her warm, steady voice gave me rare comfort. "Melissa, I've seen video recordings from guests yesterday. You did what few have the courage to do, stand up in front of everyone and reveal the truth. Now you not only have evidence but also Hannah's and your mother's own words. The important thing is to prepare for what comes next." I paused before asking, "How far do you think this will go?" Barbara's reply was slow, deliberate. "Your mother may deny it or twist things to paint you as the betrayer. But Melissa, the truth is on your side. You have the documents, the journal, and Hannah's testimony. If you want, we can move legally to hold her accountable." Her words sank heavily into me. Taking my own mother to court, something I had never dared to imagine. But after all she had done, after all the years stolen from me, was there any other way to find justice? That afternoon, Hannah texted me unexpectedly. She asked to meet at a small cafe, saying she had to talk in private. I went, still guarded. She sat in the corner, her face drawn, eyes red from crying. When I approached, she looked up, her voice trembling. Melissa, you may never forgive me, but I want to tell you the whole truth. I've known about the money for a long time. I heard Dad talk about it and I knew Mom took it. But I stayed quiet because I was scared. And because I was selfish. I wanted what Mom gave me. I wanted success, wanted to be loved, even if it meant you were left behind. I stared at her, emotions colliding inside me, anger, pain, and a trace of pity. Hannah, the one who had always been cherished, was also trapped in the cycle of favoritism and expectation. I sighed. I don't need your apology just to ease your guilt. What I need is honesty. Yesterday at least you spoke the truth. That's the only reason I'm sitting here listening now. Hannah bit her lip, tears streaming. Melissa, I'll do anything to make it right. If you want, I'll testify in court. I'll tell everyone what I know. I don't want to live in lies anymore. I searched her eyes and saw real desperation, real regret. But I kept my distance. The wounds in me couldn't heal overnight. I only nodded, speaking softly, "We'll see. I need time." In the days that followed, I continued meeting with Barbara. She helped organize all the evidence, from Dad's journal to the bank statements. She even contacted financial experts to verify the legality of the withdrawn money, strengthening the case. Meanwhile, my family spiraled into chaos. Some relatives called, half scolding, half curious. Some said I had gone too far, but others admitted they had long noticed my mother's unfairness and stayed quiet only to avoid trouble. Their words made me realize, silence only feeds injustice, and sometimes a single voice is enough to shatter a false wall. Then one evening my mother called unexpectedly. Her voice was hoarse, no longer sharp. "Melissa, I want to see you. Just once. We need to talk." I hesitated. For years, I had longed for acknowledgement, for even a hint of real affection from her. But I was afraid too, afraid of being hurt again. In the end, I agreed. We met at a small diner on the outskirts of town, far from familiar eyes. She sat there looking older than I had ever seen her. She stared at me for a long moment before speaking. "You've disgraced me completely. But I know what you said wasn't wrong. I took the money. I favored Hannah. And now everything is broken." I looked at her, no longer shaken, only feeling a cold emptiness. "You knew, but you never apologized. You didn't just take money, you took my chance, my trust. You made me invisible in my own family." She was silent, her eyes glistening. She had never shown weakness to me before, but now she seemed like a different person entirely. "Melissa, I'm sorry. I was wrong. But I can't change the past. I just hope you won't take this to court. It will destroy the family." Her words tightened my chest. I had waited my whole life to hear an apology, but when it came, it wasn't enough to heal me. I answered calmly, "Mom, I don't want to destroy the family. But the truth has been hidden too long. I can't stay silent anymore." She lowered her head, her shoulders trembling. I stood and laughed, leaving her in the dim light. Inside me was both heaviness and relief, because at last I had spoken everything. Back at my apartment, I sat by the window watching the city lights. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But at least I had stepped out of the silence, confident enough to walk on my own. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free, even if only for a fleeting moment. I remember that morning clearly, when Barbara tapped her fingers lightly on the wooden desk in her office. The air was thick with tension, every click of her pen driving home the seriousness of it all. "Melissa," she said, locking eyes with me, "it's time to bring everything into the open. If you wait, the evidence could lose its weight and your mother will find a way to deny it. Are you ready?" I took a deep breath, staring at the thick file before me. Inside were the bank records, my father's journal, the wedding recordings, even Hannah's promise to testify. Everything was there. But a trace of hesitation lingered in me, not out of fear of my mother, but out of mourning for something I still wished I had, a real family. "I'm ready," I answered, my voice steady, though not as firm as I wished it to be. Barbara gave a faint smile, her eyes holding the determination I was still searching for within myself. "Then we'll file the petition this week." From that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The days that followed were a blur of exhausting but necessary work. I spent hours with Barbara and the legal team, going over every detail. It felt as if I was retracing every step of my childhood, but this time not in darkness, under the light of truth. One evening, while sorting through stacks of documents, I got a call from Hannah. Her voice carried unease. "Melissa, I heard. Are you really going to take Mom to court?" I stayed silent for a few seconds before answering. "Do you think I have another choice, Hannah?" For years I stayed quiet. And that silence pushed me into the shadows, left me with no place in my own home. "I can't pretend anymore." On the other end, Hannah sighed. "I understand. And I'll testify like I promised. But Melissa, you prepare yourself. Mom will never accept defeat easily." I pressed my lips together, gripping the phone tightly. "I'm ready to face her." On the first day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with heavy steps. The sound of my heels against the marble echoed, reminding me of the night my father died, the night everything changed. I forced myself to stand tall, though a storm raged inside me. My mother sat on the other side, still radiating her familiar pride. Her hair was neatly styled, her elegant dress making it seem as if she were attending a gala rather than a hearing. Her eyes no longer carried cold indifference but a mix of disdain and challenge. Her lawyer rose and began questioning me, his booming voice painting me as ungrateful, accusing me of tearing the family apart for money. Each question felt like a blade cutting into old wounds. But Barbara was always there, her steady gaze and small nods reminding me, "Hold your ground." When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and looked directly at the panel. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to uncover the truth that has been buried for too long. My father left me part of his legacy not just in money but in recognition. My mother stripped it away, erased me. I've lived with that wound for years. Today, all I want is for the truth to be spoken." For a moment, the room fell silent. Dozens of eyes were fixed on me, not out of curiosity but because they saw something raw and human in my words. In the days that followed, the legal battle dragged on endlessly. Hannah testified. She stood before the court and admitted Mom had told her about the money Dad left for me, and even urged her to stay quiet. I watched Hannah's face tremble with fear and relief, as though for the first time in her life she was freed from the weight of lies. Mom, however, denied everything. She even called Hannah a traitor. The words pierced me, though I wasn't surprised. She had never once admitted to being wrong. Once during a recess, I saw her alone in the hallway. She looked at me, fury burning in her eyes. "Melissa," she said in a low voice, "do you think winning will make you happy? You're destroying this family with your own hands. After this, no one will want to see you." I stood still, breathing deeply, then replied, "Mom, the family may be shaken, reputations may be bruised, but the truth cannot stay buried forever. I'm not afraid of the light." She turned away, her back stiff, but I knew my words had struck where she didn't want to look. One late night after court, I opened Dad's journal again. His shaky but clear handwriting read, "Daughter, if one day you find these words, remember I always believed in you. Don't let anyone make you think you're unworthy. You are stronger than you know." Tears fell onto the fragile paper. I whispered, "Dad, I did what you asked." I stood up. And no matter the outcome, I'll never be silent again. The trial dragged on, but with each passing day, I felt myself breaking free from Mom's shadow. I wasn't just reclaiming lost money, I was reclaiming myself. And every morning when I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw a woman abandoned and dismissed. I saw a woman who could rise, who could speak, who could protect her own light. On the day the verdict was read, I sat in the plaintiff's bench, my hands clenched so tight they left red marks on my skin. The air in the courtroom felt heavy, every strike of the gavel pounding in my chest like a drum. All the evidence, testimonies, confrontations, it all came down to this moment. The judge read slowly, each word sinking deep. The final ruling declared my father's will legally valid, and the money and assets he left to me had to be restored. Every act of concealment and deprivation was ruled unlawful. My chest burst with relief, my heart racing. Behind me, I heard quiet murmurs of agreement. I turned my head. Hannah sat there, her eyes wet but shining with a sense of release. I gave her a small nod, my way of saying thank you. Mom, on the other hand, sat across the room, lips pressed tight, clutching a white scarf. She didn't cry, didn't speak, only stared forward with that stubborn pride I knew too well. But I understood. For her, this wasn't just a legal defeat. It was a crack in the mask of power she had worn all her life. After court, I stepped outside into the warm afternoon sun. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt light, as if a massive weight had finally been lifted. Hannah hurried over, grasping my hand. "You did it, Melissa," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Dad would be proud of you." I squeezed her hand, my eyes stinging. "We did it. You had the courage to tell the truth. That's why I wasn't alone." We stood there for a few minutes, lost in the crowd, the city rushing around us. But in that moment, all I heard was our hearts beating together. In the weeks that followed, local newspapers reported on the case. Not as sensational headlines, but as a story of justice. I read comments from strangers. Some had also been denied their rightful inheritance. Some admitted they had once stayed silent in the face of unfairness. Their words didn't heal me completely, but they made me feel less alone. One evening, I cleared away the piles of documents and opened Dad's journal again. His words echoed, "You are stronger than you know." I smiled faintly and whispered, "Dad, I finally believe it." But my journey didn't end with reclaiming what was mine. Deep inside, I knew if I stopped here, all those years of suffering would lose meaning. I had to turn my pain into something greater. Not just for myself, but for women still trapped in silence. I began reaching out to organizations that supported women in family disputes and inheritance struggles. I met women who had been disinherited, overlooked, made invisible. Their stories brought tears, some harsher than mine. In every pair of eyes, I saw the reflection of who I once was. And I knew I couldn't turn away. With the money restored from Dad's inheritance, I started a small foundation in his name. I called it the Carter Lantern, hoping it would light the way for those still lost in the dark as I once had been. It would offer legal support, counseling, and, most importantly, a place where no woman had to stand alone. On the opening day of the foundation, Hannah stood beside me, holding my hand tightly as I spoke. My voice trembled, but each word came from deep within. "Today, I don't stand here as someone who won a lawsuit. I stand here as someone who once was invisible, cast aside. I know that pain, and I don't want anyone else to live it in silence. My father left me a legacy, and today I choose to turn it into a lantern for those still walking in the dark." Applause filled the room, warm, genuine. And in that moment, I felt my father's presence, smiling at me. After the ceremony, some relatives approached me, people who had stayed silent all those years. Mom held control. One aunt's eyes brimmed with tears as she said, "Melissa, I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner. I was afraid, and I thought I couldn't do anything. But today I'm proud of you." I hugged her without blame and whispered, "Just being here with me now is enough." From afar, I noticed Mom standing alone. She didn't approach, didn't leave. Her eyes flickered, torn between pride and regret. I didn't know if she would ever truly change. But I knew my life was no longer tied to her control. That evening, back in my small apartment, I sat by the window overlooking the city lights. The whole journey replayed in my mind, from years in Mom's shadow to the courtroom where I spoke the truth, to this new beginning. I closed my eyes, listening to the wind through the window. For the first time in years, my soul felt at peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had turned it into strength. I whispered, as if to myself, as if to Dad, "I'm invisible no longer." My journey may pause here, but I know for each person listening, this story echoes in a different way. Maybe you see yourself in it, or someone you know, someone hurt, dismissed, or longing to be seen for their true worth. I truly want to hear your thoughts. If it were you, would you choose silence, or would you stand up for yourself to reclaim justice? Share your opinion in the comments below, because every story, every voice isn't just sympathy, it can be the lantern that lights the way for someone still stumbling in the dark. We are never truly alone. Sometimes all it takes is a word, a story, to remind us that truth and courage still exist. If you feel this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories about life, family, and the hidden struggles inside so many homes. Maybe those stories will be the comfort, the strength, or even the turning point for someone out there.